I used to believe love could heal anything. That if you gave enough, forgave enough, and endured enough, even the coldest heart could one day warm to your touch. I was wrong. Love, I learned too late, isn't about how much pain you can bear. It's about when you finally stop pretending the pain is love. My name was Liana Hayes once, before I died, before I watched the man I gave everything to hold another woman's hand while I struggled for breath in a hospital bed. But let me start at the beginning. The morning sunlight that used to make me smile now feels distant in memory. Back then, I'd wake up early just to prepare breakfast for Ethan Crawford, my husband. He hated scrambled eggs, loved black coffee, and always left his tie on the chair instead of the wardrobe. Little things that drove me crazy, but also made him him. "Don't wait up tonight," he said one morning, adjusting his cufflinks without looking at me. "I've got a meeting with investors." He didn't kiss me goodbye anymore. He didn't even notice the way I stood there, holding his favorite mug, like it was the only proof that I still mattered. That meeting, of course, was never with investors. It was with her, Sophia Lynn, my best friend. Or so I thought. She was always there, smiling sweetly, offering to help with Ethan's business events, complimenting me on my patience. I thought she admired me. In truth, she envied me and wanted everything that was mine. At first, I ignored the whispers, the late-night calls that ended when I entered the room, the faint perfume on Ethan's collar that wasn't mine. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, I was his wife, his only wife. But the thing about denial is that it doesn't protect you. It blinds you right before the fall. It was raining the night my world collapsed. I remember every second of it, every drop that hit the windshield, as I drove to surprise him. He had been working late again. So I thought, maybe I'd bring him dinner. Like the loving wife I always tried to be. The security guard at the hotel hesitated when I asked for his room number. I should have noticed the pity in his eyes. When the elevator doors opened, laughter spilled into the hall. Her laughter. Sophia's, and then his voice. The voice that used to whisper, "I love you," against my skin. My heart stopped before I even reached the door. But I needed to see. I needed proof that my world wasn't a lie. So I pushed open the door, and there they were, Ethan's shirt half unbuttoned, Sophia wrapped in his arms like she belonged there. Time froze. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, shaking, while Sophia looked at me with feigned guilt. "Liana." I didn't mean, but Ethan cut her off. Not to explain, not to apologize. He just said coldly, "You shouldn't have come here." That's when I realized I was the intruder in my own marriage. He chose her, right there, without hesitation. The man I loved for 8 years didn't even flinch as my heart shattered in front of him. I left without a word. The rain was merciless, blurring my vision until road lights melted into gold streaks. I didn't care where I was going. I just wanted the pain to stop. Then, the screech of tires, the shattering of glass, and everything went black. When I woke up, I couldn't move. The hospital room was cold and quiet, except for the sound of machines keeping me alive. My body felt heavy, numb, like it no longer belonged to me. Through the haze, I heard voices outside my room. "She's stable," the doctor said softly, "but her chances aren't good." And then Ethan's voice, detached, flat. "I see." That was it. No tears. No trembling hands reaching for mine. Instead, a minute later, I saw him through the glass window, walking into the next room, holding her hand, whispering, "I'm here, Sophia. I won't leave you." I tried to call out, but the oxygen mask muted my voice. Tears burned down my cheeks as I realized I was watching my own husband comfort the woman who destroyed me. The last thing I heard before the monitor flatlined was his voice again, soft, certain, and final. "She's the one I truly love." Then silence. Death wasn't what I expected. There was no tunnel of light, no peace, just weightless darkness, and the echo of his betrayal, looping endlessly in my mind. For a long time, I drifted, angry, broken, lost, until something pulled me back. A heartbeat. Mine. I gasped, sitting upright. The air around me felt heavy, thick with the scent of lilies, the same flowers from my college dorm. College. I looked at my hands. Smooth, unscarred, younger. I stumbled to the mirror and froze. The reflection staring back wasn't the woman who died in a hospital bed. It was me, 5 years younger. Before the marriage, before the betrayal, before Ethan Crawford became my undoing. I pressed my hands to my face, trembling. No, this can't be, but it was. Somehow, impossibly, I was reborn. The phone on the desk buzzed. A name flashed across the screen. Ethan. The same voice I once longed to hear now made my stomach twist. I didn't answer. For hours, I sat there in silence, the memories of two timelines colliding inside me like waves. The warmth of the past, and the cold sting of what was yet to come. And then, as the sun rose, one thought settled deep into my heart. This time, I won't chase him. This time, I'll let him have what he wants. Let his lover take my place. I'll disappear from his life completely, and watch from afar as he learns what losing me truly means. I smiled bitterly, wiping my tears. You thought I'd never let go, Ethan. But this time, you won't even know I existed. The next few days passed in quiet resolve. I packed up, withdrew from university, and ignored every call from him. When my friends asked where I was going, I said I needed time to think, to breathe. But inside, I was already gone. I changed my name to Mira Lane. The name felt like freedom, like a curtain between my past and my future. I moved to another city, a small, peaceful coastal town where nobody knew who I was. The air smelled like salt and wet stone, and the waves whispered like old friends. There, I found an old apartment above an art shop. Funny, I hadn't painted since college. Ethan once told me art was a waste of time. But as my fingers brushed against the empty canvas again, something inside me healed. The first stroke of paint felt like oxygen. The first finished piece felt like rebirth. I painted my pain, my love, my death, my freedom, every emotion that had ever caged me. Weeks turned into months. My small paintings began to catch attention. The local gallery offered to display them. People started calling me the hidden artist because I refused to show my face. I didn't want fame. I wanted silence. Sometimes, though, I'd catch myself wondering what he was doing. Was he married to Sophia now? Was he happy? Did he ever think of me? I told myself it didn't matter. But late at night, when the sea wind slipped through my window, I'd remember his voice, the one that once promised forever, and feel a dull ache in my chest. And yet, every morning I'd remind myself that love no longer exists, that woman no longer exists. Mira Lane was born from ashes. She had no past, no husband, no pain left to carry, or so I believed, because destiny, cruel as it is, has a habit of bringing back the people you most want to forget. And soon enough, the man who thought I'd never let go would find me again. But this time, I wouldn't be the one trembling. He would. The sea became my only witness. Every morning, its waves erased my footprints from the sand, as if reminding me that the past too could be washed away if I let it. I spent the first few months after my rebirth learning how to live again, not as Liana, the dutiful wife, the soft-spoken woman who smiled through tears, but as Mira Lane, a woman with no history, no expectations, no one to please. It was strange at first. I'd wake up expecting to hear Ethan's voice, expecting the buzz of his phone, the click of his shoes on marble floors, but instead I heard the sound of waves, the call of seagulls, and the rhythmic drip of paint falling from my brush. My apartment was small, cluttered with half-finished canvases and the smell of oil paint. The walls were pale, the windows wide, and the sunlight would pool over the wooden floor like melted gold. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't luxury, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I didn't have to walk on eggshells. I didn't have to pretend. I could laugh, cry, or paint until dawn, and no one would criticize me for being too emotional. Freedom felt quiet, lonely sometimes, but peaceful. I started teaching painting lessons to children at the local arts center. Their laughter filled the room like light. They didn't care about names or pasts. They only cared about colors. One of them, a little girl named Emma, once asked, "Miss Mira, why do you always paint sad faces?" Her question caught me off guard. I looked down at my canvas. Another faceless woman with eyes full of longing, standing at the edge of an ocean. I smiled faintly. Because even sad faces have stories worth telling, sweetheart. Emma tilted her head, thoughtful. Then maybe next time, you should paint her smiling. Children are strange little prophets sometimes. That night, I painted that same woman again. But this time, I gave her a small smile. It wasn't happiness, not quite, but something close, something hopeful. Weeks passed, and life began to settle into a rhythm. Morning coffee by the window, teaching at the arts center, painting until my fingers ached, and then one afternoon, while hanging paintings for an upcoming exhibition, I heard a voice behind me. "Your brushstrokes are heavy on emotion. Every line feels like it's hiding a story." I turned around to find a man standing there, tall with a camera slung across his shoulder, and kind eyes that seemed to notice everything. He smiled easily. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Noah Reed, journalist with the Artline Gazette. The gallery asked me to cover your exhibit." "Oh," I said, a bit flustered. "You're early. It's not open yet." He shrugged. "I like seeing art before it meets the world. You learn more that way." There was something disarming about his tone. Not intrusive, just curious. He studied one of my paintings for a long time, before saying quietly, "This woman, she looks like she's remembering something painful, but choosing not to cry." My throat tightened. Maybe she already cried enough in another life. He looked at me then, really looked, and smiled. Maybe she's stronger than anyone realizes. Something about that smile lingered long after he left. That night, as I sat by the window, sketching the reflection of the moon on the water, I realized I hadn't thought about Ethan all day, not once. And for the first time since waking in this reborn life, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt healing. But peace never lasts long, when fate has other plans. About 2 weeks later, while preparing for the exhibition, the gallery owner rushed into the studio, breathless. "Mira, you won't believe it. The Crawford Group just confirmed sponsorship for the event." My heart froze. Crawford Group. It couldn't be. No, it had to be coincidence. The world was big. Surely not him. "They're sending their CEO to attend personally," she continued excitedly. "It's such an honor. He rarely appears in public art events. But I guess your work intrigued him." I smiled faintly, forcing calm. "That's wonderful." Inside, though, every nerve in my body screamed, "Ethan Crawford, CEO of Crawford Group, my husband from another life." I felt my world tilt. After 5 long years of distance, after death, rebirth, and a new identity, fate was about to bring us face to face again. The night of the exhibition arrived like a slow-burning storm. The gallery was filled with murmurs and soft music. Guests sipped champagne and admired the paintings lining the walls. My paintings. I stood in the corner, wearing a long silver-grey dress that shimmered like moonlight. My hair, once long and soft, was now cut short. A deliberate decision to hide from my past. To the world, I was Mira Lane, the mysterious artist who never gave interviews. The door opened. Cameras flashed. The air shifted. And then, I saw him. Ethan Crawford. Time didn't soften him. If anything, it sharpened him. He was still tall, still effortlessly commanding. But his eyes carried something new. An edge of exhaustion, perhaps, or arrogance polished over years of wealth. He shook hands, smiled politely, exchanged formalities, and then his gaze landed on one of my paintings, the one I'd titled Echo. It was a self-portrait, though no one knew. The woman in it had her back turned to the viewer, facing an ocean under a stormy sky. Her reflection in the water was blurred, fading. He stared at it for a long time, his expression unreadable. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I hid behind a column, praying he wouldn't notice me. But fate doesn't take requests. He turned, slowly, deliberately, and his eyes met mine. For a second, neither of us breathed. His face went pale. His glass slipped slightly in his hand. It was as if he'd seen a ghost, and in a way he had. He took a hesitant step toward me. "Liana!" My lips parted, but I caught myself. I straightened my posture. Let my expression turn politely confused. "I'm sorry?" He blinked rapidly, struggling to recover. You just look like someone I knew." I smiled faintly. "I get that sometimes." "Your name," he said slowly. "You're the artist. Mira Lane." "Yes." He stared for a long moment, then gave a soft, disbelieving laugh. "It's uncanny. You look exactly like her." My heart clenched at the way he said her. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Was she someone special?" His eyes darkened. "She was my wife. She died 5 years ago." The words hung between us like smoke. I forced a calm smile. "I'm sorry for your loss." He nodded absently, still staring at me, as if trying to tear through the disguise and see the ghost underneath. Then he murmured, almost to himself, "But it's strange. She would have loved this painting. It feels familiar." I said nothing, because if I spoke, my voice would tremble, and he would know. When he finally walked away, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Noah appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of wine. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed softly. "Maybe I have." He frowned slightly, following my gaze to where Ethan stood. "You know him." I hesitated. "Once, in another life." He smiled, half joking. "That sounds poetic." If only he knew how literal it was. That night, after the exhibition, I stood by the sea again. The wind whipped through my hair, cold and sharp. I thought of Ethan's eyes, how they'd softened when he said, "She was my wife." A part of me, buried deep, wanted to scream, "I'm right here." But another part whispered, "Let him wonder. Let him live haunted by the face of the woman he lost." Never realizing she was still alive, standing beneath the same moon. He once believed I could never let go. Now, it was his turn to learn what it felt like to be the one left behind. The night after the exhibition felt heavier than usual. The sea outside my window churned under the moonlight, restless, almost echoing the chaos inside me. I had promised myself that if I ever crossed paths with Ethan again, I would feel nothing. I would look him in the eye and feel only the satisfaction of freedom. But when he said, "She was my wife," the ache in my chest betrayed me. It's cruel how memory lingers in the smallest things. The tilt of his head, the way his voice lowered when he spoke my name. It dragged me back to the nights when I used to fall asleep, listening to that same voice, whisper promises it never kept. But that was another lifetime. Now, I was Mira Lane, untouchable, unreadable, reborn. And he was just a stranger, haunted by a ghost that wore my face. For the next few days, I threw myself into work. The success of the exhibition brought more commissions, more press coverage, more attention than I ever asked for. Noah dropped by often, sometimes under the excuse of interviews, though I suspected he just enjoyed the quiet company. He had this calming presence, gentle, grounded, where Ethan's love once burned like wildfire. Noah's felt like sunlight, warm, steady, and patient. One afternoon, as we sat in the studio surrounded by sketches and half-finished paintings, he said, "You're not like most artists I've met. You paint as if you're trying to remember something you can't talk about." I froze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just trying to forget." He leaned back, studying me. "And has it worked?" "Not yet," I admitted softly. He didn't press further. Instead, he smiled gently and changed the topic, just like that. No probing, no judgment. It was refreshing, and maybe in another time, another life, I could have fallen for someone like him without hesitation. But peace never lasts long when the past refuses to die. 3 days after the exhibition, I received a letter from the gallery. Crawford Group wanted to buy one of my paintings, Echo Ethan's favorite. My hand trembled slightly as I read the note. Mr. Crawford would like to personally meet the artist before finalizing the purchase. He insists it's important. I sat there for a long while, staring at the words, the way they seemed to mock me. He was still chasing ghosts, no matter. I wasn't the same woman he used to control. So when we met at the gallery's private room, later that week, I was calm, collected, dressed in quiet confidence. Ethan stood near the window, his reflection split by the glass. The city lights behind him painted him in fragments, half shadow, half memory. He turned as I entered. His eyes, those same dark eyes that once melted me, searched my face again. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "Of course," I replied, tone neutral. He gestured to the painting between us. "This piece, I can't explain it, but it feels like it's speaking to me, like I've seen it before." I smiled faintly. "Art has a way of echoing what we've lost." He nodded, distracted, his gaze returning to me. "You really do look like her. The resemblance is uncanny. Perhaps you're seeing what you wish to see," I said softly. He studied me for a long moment, then said, "Her name was Liana. She died suddenly. There are days I still expect to hear her voice." I tilted my head. "Did you love her?" The question caught him off guard. His expression faltered for just a second. He hesitated before saying, "I thought I did, but I didn't realize what love meant until she was gone." His voice cracked slightly, and for a heartbeat, I almost believed him. Almost, but then I remembered the hospital room, Sophia's hand in his, the cold finality of, "She's the one I truly love," and my heart hardened all over again. "Love," I said slowly, "isn't about realizing someone's worth when they're gone. It's about never making them question it while they're still there." His eyes widened. The words struck something inside him. Maybe recognition, maybe guilt. I smiled politely and turned away. "If you still want the painting, the gallery can handle the purchase." Before he could reply, I walked out, leaving him alone with the ghost he couldn't touch. That night, Ethan called the gallery 3 times, insisting on knowing more about me. He learned little. My identity was clean, my past erased, because I had planned it that way. Still, he couldn't let go. He began attending every event my work appeared in. Sometimes, I'd spot him in the crowd, watching silently, never approaching, like a man chasing a mirage he wasn't sure was real. And the more he searched, the deeper he fell into his own regret. Meanwhile, Sophia, his lover from the past, grew restless. Rumor had it she'd taken control of several of his company's projects, making bold decisions behind his back. She was the same woman as before, hungry, ambitious, charming. But now, without me in the picture, Ethan saw her for what she truly was. The cracks in their perfect image began to show. I should have felt satisfaction watching from afar. But all I felt was emptiness, because no amount of his downfall could ever erase the years he stole from me. One evening, after another long day of painting, I found Noah waiting by the beach. He was sitting on the sand, shoes off, camera resting beside him. "I figured you'd come here after work," he said with a smile. "You're getting good at reading me," I teased lightly, sitting beside him. "It's not hard. You only come here when something's bothering you." I looked at the waves, letting the silence stretch, before whispering, "Do you believe people can change?" He thought for a moment. "I believe people can regret, but change, that's harder. Regret doesn't rewrite the past. It only teaches us how to live with it." His words hit deep. I wanted to tell him everything, about the life I'd lived, the man who'd betrayed me, the second chance I'd been given. But how could I? It would sound insane. So instead, I just said softly, "I think I used to know someone who's learning that lesson now." Noah smiled faintly. "Then maybe he'll become a better man because of it." I looked at him, my heart aching in quiet contradiction. Maybe, but some lessons come too late. A week later, my gallery phone rang again. It was the assistant. "Miss Lane, Mr. Crawford insists on meeting you again. He said it's urgent." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Tell him I'm unavailable." "But he said he'll come to your studio if he has to." The line went silent. My pulse quickened. He didn't know where I lived, but knowing him, he could find out, and I couldn't risk him learning too much. So I agreed to meet him one last time. He arrived the next day. No entourage, no arrogance, just him, standing at the door of my studio with weary eyes and a faint smile. "I'm not here to bother you," he said softly. "I just needed to ask something." I kept my distance. "Go ahead." He looked around at my paintings, every one of them filled with pieces of our old life. The sea, the lilies, the rain. "Did you know," he said quietly, "that my wife loved to paint? She stopped because of me. I thought her dreams were childish. Now I'd give anything to see her hold a brush again." His voice trembled at the edges. I swallowed hard. "That's a shame," he nodded, eyes misty. "She used to say the world looked different through colors. I never understood what she meant until now." I forced my gaze away. "Maybe you weren't meant to." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "If you were her, if there's even a part of her in you, I'd say I'm sorry. For everything." My breath caught. It was the apology I'd once begged for, cried for, prayed for. But hearing it now didn't bring peace. It only reminded me of the years I'd wasted waiting for it. I met his gaze and said softly, "I'm not her." Then before he could reply, I turned my back and walked away. This time, it was his turn to be left standing in silence. Later that night, as I locked the studio, I caught my reflection in the glass door. For a moment, I saw her, Liana, looking back at me, fragile, hurt, forgiving. Then I blinked, and she was gone. Mira Lane remained, and she no longer lived for apologies. But as I walked home, a strange feeling settled in my chest, a quiet, haunting certainty that this wasn't over, because men like Ethan never stop chasing what they can't have. And soon, his obsession with the ghost he once destroyed would consume him completely. Days turned into months, and months into nearly 2 years. My little studio had become a haven, not only for me, but for those who sought comfort in colors, brushstrokes, and silence. Under the name Mira Eleanor, I was no longer a ghost of my past. I was a woman reborn through art. My pieces sold quietly but steadily. My name whispered in art circles for their emotional depth and haunting warmth. They said my paintings felt like goodbyes painted in gold. They weren't wrong. Every canvas carried a piece of my old self, a farewell wrapped in color. Sometimes, when the sunlight streamed through my studio window, I'd pause with a brush in hand and think of the life I'd left behind. Ethan would be at the peak of his career by now, no doubt. Sophia by his side, smiling with that same deceitful sweetness she once offered me. I wondered if she ever thought of the woman she helped destroy. I wondered if he ever regretted that moment, the last words he spoke before I died. But then, I dip my brush again and remind myself, I didn't come back to wonder. I came back to live. One crisp autumn morning, I was preparing my pieces for my first small exhibition. My assistant, Clara, an energetic girl barely in her 20s, rushed into the studio, waving her phone excitedly. Mira, you won't believe this. You've been featured in the Eden Art Review. They called you the most promising emotional painter of the year. I smiled faintly, her joy infectious, but a quiet dread tugged at me. Publicity meant visibility, and visibility meant danger. Ethan's company still sponsored major art events. His name was synonymous with culture, business, and influence. If my name circulated too widely, could he? No, it didn't matter. I was no longer Liana. The evening of the exhibition arrived with glittering lights and polite applause. My work hung across cream-colored walls, each painting titled with fragments of my rebirth. The silence before sunrise, unwritten promises, the weight of light. Guests wondered, sipping wine, speaking softly about my use of loss and freedom. I listened, detached, my hands folded calmly, and then the air shifted. It was strange, how your body remembers someone, long before your mind catches up. The faint cologne, the measured footsteps, the quiet authority in a room that demanded none. My breath hitched as I turned slightly. There he was, Ethan. He looked older, tired around the eyes, his jaw sharper, his hair flecked with the faintest silver. But it was unmistakably him. My heart stuttered painfully against my ribs, memories rushing like waves, threatening to drown me. He stood at the entrance, flanked by colleagues, holding a glass of champagne that he hadn't yet sipped. For a moment, his gaze wandered aimlessly across the gallery, until it landed on me. The glass trembled in his hand. His eyes widened just slightly, enough to betray his shock. Then, slowly, he started walking toward me. My pulse roared in my ears. I forced my breathing to stay even. I was Mira, not Liana, not the wife who died whispering his name, just a stranger who painted pain beautifully. Mira Eleanor, he said, his voice uncertain, almost hesitant. Your work, it's captivating. I turned to him with a calm smile, tilting my head slightly. Thank you, Mr. Ethan Cross, he said quickly. Cross Industries. We sponsor this event. Ah, I nodded politely. Then I should thank you for your contribution to the arts. He blinked, as if the casualness of my tone unsettled him. He studied my face for a long moment, his eyes searching for something. Familiarity, maybe, or forgiveness. Forgive me, he said softly. You remind me of someone I once knew. I let out a small practiced laugh. Funny how art does that. It brings ghosts to life. For a second, he looked genuinely shaken, his throat tightening before he murmured, Yes, it does. The conversation drifted away as more guests approached me, asking questions about my process. Ethan lingered nearby, pretending to admire a painting, but his eyes kept returning to me. I could feel his gaze like a shadow pressed against my back. That night, after the exhibition closed, I stood alone before one of my most personal paintings, Silent Farewell. It was the only one I painted entirely from memory. A woman walking away through falling snow, while a man stood in the distance, reaching out but too late. Behind me, the door creaked open softly. I didn't turn. Why does this one feel so sad? Ethan's voice came again, low, almost broken. Because it's about endings, I said, my tone even. Not all goodbyes allowed. He stepped closer. You sound like her, the way you speak. He stopped, as if catching himself. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. I turned slightly, meeting his gaze. Calm, steady, unreadable. You look like someone who's still looking for something that's gone. Our eyes met, and for the first time, I saw regret flicker there. Real human regret. It was fleeting, like a crack in a mask, but it was enough to make my chest ache. He left soon after, promising to return. When the door shut behind him, I exhaled slowly, trembling, my hand clutching the edge of the table. I wasn't prepared for this. Not the sight of him, not the sound of his voice softened by years and regret, but fate, it seemed, wasn't done playing with us. The next morning, Clara burst into the studio again, her phone in hand. "Mira," Mr. Cross bought silent farewell. He said it was personal. I froze. My brush slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor. Of all the paintings he could have chosen, he chose the one that was about us. I whispered to myself, voice trembling, "So, Ethan, the ghosts are haunting you now too." And somewhere, deep inside me, the fire I'd buried for years flickered alive again. Not of love, but of something more dangerous. Recognition. He remembered the ache of losing me, even if he didn't yet know he was standing before the woman he'd once destroyed. And that, I realized, was only the beginning. I thought I was prepared. I told myself I was calm, detached, and untouchable. But the days that followed Ethan's unexpected reappearance proved me wrong in ways I couldn't have imagined. It started subtly. An occasional bouquet of white lilies delivered to my studio with no note. Polite invitations to upcoming art events. The familiar name, Ethan Cross, appearing too often in my inbox. At first, I ignored them all, telling myself it was coincidence. But when his presence began to shadow every exhibition, every interview, and even the quiet streets I walked home on, I knew fate was circling back. He didn't come with the arrogance I once knew. The cold, commanding man who used to own every room now seemed haunted. I'd catch glimpses of him standing at the back of my shows, never approaching, just watching with an unreadable expression. I told myself to stay indifferent. I'd worked too hard to rebuild my peace. But the truth was, every time I caught his eyes, those same eyes that once turned me to dust, something inside me quivered, not out of love, but from memory. The third time he showed up at my studio, unannounced, I finally turned to face him fully. He looked exhausted, dressed immaculately as always, but his eyes carried sleepless nights. "You shouldn't come here, Mr. Cross," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I needed to see you," he replied, his tone low, restrained. "I know it sounds insane, but I can't stop thinking about you, about the way you speak, the way you paint. It's like I've met you before." I turned away, forcing my hands to stay still. "Perhaps you see what you want to see. Artists often remind people of their own ghosts." He took a hesitant step forward. "You don't understand. I lost someone, years ago. My wife, she died, and His voice broke slightly. "I never got to say goodbye." I froze. My name, my story, hung between us like smoke he couldn't see through. Slowly, I turned and met his gaze, hiding the storm inside me behind a faint smile. "I'm sorry for your loss." The simple words hit him harder than I expected. He swallowed, nodded once, and left without another word. When the door shut behind him, I sank into my chair, trembling. My heart wasn't weak anymore, but his regret was a weapon I hadn't prepared for. As the days passed, Ethan's quiet pursuit continued. He didn't pressure or plead. He simply appeared in small, deliberate ways. A handwritten note complimenting my latest painting. A silent donation to the children's art fund I managed. A phone call from the gallery director mentioning how Mr. Cross wanted to sponsor my next exhibition personally. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to throw every reminder of him into the fire. But the problem with hatred is, it feeds on attention. And the more I tried not to think of him, the more I found myself wondering why now. Why, after all this time, was he suddenly searching for something he'd long thrown away? One evening, I found myself sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city lights flicker like fading stars. Noah joined me, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He was different from Ethan in every possible way. Gentle, steady, kind. Where Ethan demanded, Noah listened. Where Ethan broke me, Noah helped me rebuild quietly, without asking for anything in return. "You're quiet tonight," Noah said, his eyes soft. "Something on your mind?" I hesitated, swirling my coffee. "Do you believe people can truly change, Noah?" He smiled faintly. "Change? Maybe. But regret? That never really leaves." The simplicity of his answer felt heavier than I expected. I wanted to tell him everything. The lies, the death, the rebirth. But I couldn't. Not yet. My past was a wound I'd learned to bandage, not expose. 2 weeks later, I attended an elite charity gala hosted by Cross Industries. I hadn't planned to, but the invitation had been strongly encouraged by the art committee. I wore a soft ivory gown, my hair tied back elegantly, my emotions guarded behind layers of calm. As soon as I stepped into the glittering hall, I felt his presence. Ethan stood across the room, talking to a group of investors. Beside him was Sophia, his fiancée. She looked radiant, still beautiful, but there was something in her expression I'd never seen before. Restlessness. The satisfaction of victory had faded. Insecurity had replaced it. When Ethan saw me, his voice trailed off mid-sentence. Sophia noticed his gaze and turned. For a split second, our eyes met. Hers sharp and assessing, mine tranquil and detached. Recognition didn't dawn on her. My new face, softened hair, and quiet confidence made sure of that. But instinctively, she didn't like me. I saw it in the way her fingers tightened around Ethan's arm. Later that evening, as I was leaving, Ethan intercepted me near the garden terrace. "You shouldn't have come here alone," he said softly, stepping into the dim light. I tilted my head. "This is a public event, Mr. Cross. You don't own it, or me." He flinched slightly at the calm sting in my tone. "You remind me so much of her," he whispered, more to himself than to me. "Every word you say feels like déjà vu. Tell me, have we met before?" For a moment, I considered lying outright, but then I realized I didn't need to. Truth and deception now danced in the same rhythm. "Maybe in another lifetime," I said. His breath caught, and before he could speak again, Sophia appeared at his side, her expression tight. "Darling, there you are," she said sweetly, though her eyes flicked between us with suspicion. "You must be the painter everyone's talking about." "Mira, is it?" I smiled faintly. "That's right." She extended her hand, her diamond ring glittering under the soft lights. "Your art is interesting. So emotional. You must have been through a lot." "Oh, I suppose we all have," I replied, my tone polite but edged. "Pain teaches expression. Some of us paint it. Some of us cause it." Her smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. Ethan's jaw tightened beside her. The air between us felt electric. Unspoken histories humming beneath the surface. As I turned to leave, Sophia called after me. "Perhaps I could commission you for something. A portrait, maybe." I paused, meeting her eyes over my shoulder. "I only paint truth," I said softly. "Are you sure you want that?" I walked away, leaving her staring after me, her composure cracking just a little. That night, Ethan called my gallery. His message was simple. "Please, Mira, I need to see you. One conversation." That's all. I didn't respond. But deep inside, a storm began to build. The kind that didn't destroy right away, but promised to change everything when it finally broke. And I knew then, Ethan wasn't chasing Mira. He was chasing Liana's ghost. And he didn't even know it yet. Rain fell in a steady hush against the glass that night, a rhythm that used to lull me to sleep. but now only made the memories louder. The charity gala had been 3 weeks ago, yet Ethan's eyes still haunted the edges of my mind. Pleading, confused, almost human. I told myself to move on, to pour every thought into my art and into Noah's gentle laughter. But fate doesn't accept unfinished business. Rumors began spreading through the art circles and business pages at the same time. Cross Industries was faltering. Contracts withdrawn. Investors pulling out. Someone inside had been siphoning money from the company's overseas accounts. I pretended not to care, but the more I tried to ignore the whispers, the clearer they became. Then, one afternoon, Clara rushed into my studio again, breathless. "Mira, look!" She thrust her phone at me. The headline blazed across the screen. Sophia Lane wanted for fraud. CEO Ethan Cross under investigation. My paintbrush froze mid-stroke. Beneath the headline was a photo of Ethan standing before flashing cameras. Shoulders bowed, the weight of disgrace pressing visibly on him. Sophia's image beside his showed her stepping into a car, sunglasses hiding her face. It was almost poetic. She'd taken the money and run, leaving him with the ruins she'd built. For days, I fought the urge to check on him. That part of me that still remembered his warmth, his once soft laughter, his broken promise. I told myself this was karma balancing its scales. But when the news came that Ethan had collapsed outside the courthouse, I found myself in my car before I even realized where I was going. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and rain. I hesitated at the entrance to his ward, hidden behind a bouquet meant for someone else. Through the narrow window, I saw him lying there, pale and hollow-eyed, IV tubes glinting under the white light. He looked smaller than I remembered, weaker, mortal. I turned to leave, until his voice broke the silence. "I knew you'd come." My heart stumbled. Slowly I stepped inside. He opened his eyes and smiled faintly, exhausted but sure. "I wasn't wrong, was I?" he whispered. "It's you, Liana." For the first time since my rebirth, the name cut through the room like thunder. I didn't answer, but the look in my eyes betrayed everything. He tried to sit up, wincing. I don't understand how, but I knew. The way you spoke, the way you looked at me, and didn't forgive me. God, Liana, I thought I'd gone mad. I stayed where I was, my fingers tightening around the flowers. "You should rest, Mr. Cross. Delusions aren't healthy." He shook his head weakly. "You can lie to the world, but not to me. I see it now. The fire I killed, burning again in someone who looks like you. Tell me I'm wrong, and I'll let you go." I wanted to say yes, you're wrong, and walk out forever. But something in me refused. So I said nothing. He closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his temple. Sophia betrayed me. I lost everything. Money, reputation, friends. And it's fair. I destroyed the only person who ever believed in me. When you died, I thought I'd finally be free from guilt. But you never really left. The room fell into heavy silence. Machines hummed. My pulse echoed in my ears. Finally, I whispered, "You don't get to regret now, Ethan. Not when regret is the only thing left of you." He looked at me then, truly looked, and for a heartbeat, the man who once made me laugh appeared through the ruin. "If I could start again," he began. I cut him off. "You had your start. You just chose someone else to live it with." The words left me trembling. I placed the flowers on the side table and turned to leave. But his voice, softer now, stopped me. "Thank you for coming, even if it was only to see what's become of me." I paused at the doorway. "Don't thank me," I said quietly. "This isn't mercy. It's closure." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening with reflections. I walked until my legs ached, my mind spiraling between pity and anger, love and loss. For years I'd dreamed of seeing him broken, the way he broke me. But standing in that sterile room, I realized revenge didn't taste like victory. It tasted like ashes. That night, Noah found me sitting on the balcony again, drenched from the rain I'd walked through. He didn't ask what happened. He simply sat beside me, handing me a towel. After a long silence, I murmured, "Some ghosts beg to be forgiven. Others just need to be buried." He touched my hand gently. "And which one is he?" I looked out at the city lights, their reflections trembling like tears. "Both," I whispered. "But I won't be the one to do it." A week later, the news reported that Ethan had resigned from his company and sold off his remaining shares. His name faded from the headlines, replaced by newer scandals, newer faces. But in the quiet hours of the night, I could still feel the pull of the past, the echo of his apology, the weight of what we could never fix. I thought it was over. I thought walking away from that hospital would be the final page. But closure, like fate, never comes easily. Because one evening, as I was closing my studio, I found an envelope slipped beneath the door. My name, Mira, written in his unmistakable handwriting. Inside, a single note. "You said this was closure, but for me, it's the beginning of my punishment. Let me prove I've changed. Let me see you one last time." Ethan. My hands trembled as I folded the letter. Against my will, a part of me still wanted to know if redemption was even possible for a man like him. And that dangerous curiosity was exactly how the past began to drag me back. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, the first streaks of sunlight filtering through the pale curtains. The air was cold, crisp, carrying that familiar ache of nostalgia that never fully left me. I sat by the window, sipping coffee, watching the world outside awaken, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to remember the man who once held me close. Before he became a stranger, wrapped in the warmth of another woman, back then, Rian would wake up beside me, trace my jawline with sleepy fingers, and whisper, "You're my peace, Leah." I believed him. I believed every word that came from his lips, every promise he made when he swore I was the only one. But now, looking out at the foggy skyline, I realized peace was something he never truly gave me. It was something I had to reclaim for myself. I hadn't seen him since that night at the charity event, though whispers about him traveled faster than I could avoid. People said he was restless, unpredictable, that he'd broken things off with Clara for reasons no one knew. Some said he'd been drinking too much. Others that he'd been obsessively searching for someone. Me. But that didn't change anything. The past me would have rushed back to his side, blinded by love, desperate to save him. The new me, I had learned that sometimes saving yourself was the only real act of love. That day, I went to my art gallery, the one I built from scratch after Rebirth. It was my sanctuary, a place filled with color, emotion, and stories of heartbreak and healing. As I walked through the halls, I noticed the new piece the curator had hung at the entrance, a painting of a woman standing in the rain, her reflection fractured by ripples, yet her face was serene, calm. The title read, "Becoming." It felt like looking in a mirror. As the crowd arrived, the room filled with polite chatter and soft music. I greeted visitors, smiled, laughed, even posed for photos. And then, in the middle of that peaceful rhythm, I felt it again. That unsettling stillness that preceded chaos. He was there. Rihan. He stood near the entrance, wearing a black suit that looked sharper than the last time I'd seen him. His expression wasn't the confident mask he always wore. No, this time it was something else, a mixture of disbelief and longing. His eyes, those same dark eyes that once looked at me like I was the center of his world, were now searching the crowd desperately, until they landed on me. Our gazes met, and for a heartbeat, everything went silent. He looked like a man who'd seen a ghost, and maybe, to him, I was one. The woman he betrayed had come back to life, but she wasn't his anymore. He took a step forward. Leah, his voice cracked slightly, just enough to betray the calm exterior he was trying to maintain. I tilted my head, offered a soft smile. "Mr. Rian," I greeted, deliberately formal, as though he was nothing more than a passing acquaintance. The crowd around us continued chatting, oblivious to the silent storm brewing between us. He blinked, taken aback by my composure. You're alive." I let out a quiet laugh. "I don't remember dying." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flashing across his face. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide like this?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "Because, Rian, you weren't the man I wanted to be found by anymore." The color drained from his face. Before he could speak again, a familiar voice called from behind me. Deep, calm, confident. "Leah, the reporters are ready for your interview." I turned, meeting the warm smile of Ethan, my new business partner. He'd been nothing but supportive, kind, and quietly protective. His presence was steady, like the grounding warmth I never had before. Rian's jaw tightened. "You're working with him?" he asked, his tone sharper than it should have been. I shrugged lightly. "He believes in what I do. That's more than I can say for some people." Ethan's hand brushed against mine. A subtle, respectful gesture. And yet, it was enough to make Rian's expression twist with something raw. Regret? Jealousy? Maybe both. "Leah," Rian stepped closer, his voice softening. "You can't just erase what we had." I looked up at him, my eyes steady. "I didn't erase it, Rian. I outgrew it." That simple sentence hung between us like a knife. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, the man who once thought I'd never leave him looked lost. The rest of the event passed in a blur. He stayed in the shadows watching me. Every laugh, every smile, every interaction I had with Ethan, as though he couldn't comprehend how easily I'd moved on. But the truth was, it wasn't easy. It had taken me dying once to finally learn how to live without him. When the gallery finally emptied, he approached me one last time. "Leah," he said quietly, "if you needed me to beg for forgiveness, I would." I met his eyes. "I don't need your forgiveness, Rian, and you don't need mine. What's gone is gone." He looked at me as though trying to find a trace of the girl he once knew. But all he found was the woman who'd risen from the ashes of his betrayal. I walked past him, feeling his gaze follow me until I disappeared through the door. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights flickering around me, I realized something important. Rebirth wasn't about revenge or proving him wrong. It was about finally being free enough not to care. Days passed after the gallery event, but Rian's presence lingered in the corners of my mind, like a shadow I couldn't completely ignore. I tried to brush it off, to focus on my work, on the quiet rhythm of my new life. Early mornings, coffee by the window, painting till dusk, and peaceful dinners with Ethan, who always treated me like a choice, never an obligation. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before Rian's obsession with the past dragged both of us back into chaos. And I was right. It started with a call from my old friend Maya. "Leah," she said, her voice hushed. "You should know something. Rian's been looking into your life. Everything. Your gallery, your projects, even your travel history." I felt a chill spread through me, though my tone remained calm. "Let him. He's chasing ghosts." Maya hesitated before whispering, "It's not just that. He's been questioning Clara too. I think he found something." I froze. "Something?" "Yes, something about her, and the reason your father's company almost collapsed before you died." That single sentence made my breath hitch. My father, the man whose last wish was for me to live happily, whom I lost too soon. His company had fallen apart because of mismanagement. Or so I had been told. Could Clara have been involved even then? Later that night, I found myself standing by the window again, staring at the city lights. The past was supposed to stay buried, but it had a cruel way of digging itself back up when least expected. The next day, I received a message. A simple one. Rian, meet me. You deserve to know the truth. My instinct told me to ignore it. But curiosity, or maybe unfinished pain, made me go. We met in a quiet cafe on the edge of the city. The kind of place where time moved slower, as if it didn't want to interrupt people trying to heal. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting at the corner table, a folder beside his untouched coffee. He looked different, tired, unshaven, eyes shadowed with sleepless nights. But when he saw me, something flickered in them. Relief, guilt, and maybe hope. Leah, he started softly. Before you walk away again, just listen. I sat across from him, arms crossed. You have 5 minutes. He slid the folder toward me. Inside were printed bank records, emails, and a few photos. My eyes scanned the pages, and my stomach turned. Clara's name was everywhere. Money transfers from his company's account to hers. Records of her meeting with board members who had betrayed my father. And, most damning of all, a message she had sent to someone days before my death. Once Leah's gone, he'll have no reason to look back. Everything will be ours. I felt my hands tremble slightly, though I forced my voice to stay steady. What is this? Rian exhaled heavily. The truth. She didn't just lie to you. She lied to me too. She used me, Leah. Everything I thought I knew was poisoned. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. And only now you realized, after destroying me for her? His jaw tightened. I was blind, and by the time I saw it, it was too late. You were gone. I met his gaze coldly. No, Rian. You didn't lose me because she fooled you. You lost me because you chose to believe her over me. Silence fell between us. A silence heavy, with all the years we couldn't take back. He leaned forward, desperation flickering in his tone. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I had to tell you. She was behind your father's fall. Behind everything. I thought I owed you that truth. I closed the folder slowly, meeting his eyes one last time. Truth doesn't erase betrayal. It only reminds us why it hurt. He flinched slightly but didn't look away. What now? I stood. Now, you live with the ghost you made. I already learned how. As I turned to leave, he whispered, almost to himself, You're not the same woman I lost. I paused briefly, my voice quiet but firm. No, and I never will be. When I walked out of the cafe, I expected to feel angry, vindicated even. But instead, I felt hollow. Knowing the truth didn't undo the pain. It just made it sharper, more defined. Later that evening, Ethan noticed my distant expression. Long day, he asked gently. I nodded, then smiled faintly. Just closed an old chapter. He handed me a glass of water. Good, then stop rereading it. I laughed quietly, realizing how easily his words soothed me. Something Rian's love never could. But peace, I learned, is never permanent, because the very next morning I got a call from the police. Miss Leah, the officer said, we need your statement. It's about Clara. She's missing. My hand tightened around the phone. Missing? Yes. Last seen near Rian's estate last night. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The world around me blurred into a single, haunting realization. That maybe this story wasn't over. That maybe Rebirth didn't free me from everything. Especially when the past still had one last twist to reveal. The moment I ended the call with the police, the air in my apartment shifted. Still, heavy, as though even the walls knew what was coming. Clara's disappearance wasn't just a tabloid scandal. It was a storm waiting to break, and somehow I was standing right in its path again. Ethan found me standing by the window, the phone still in my hand. What happened? He asked, voice low and careful. I turned to him, my tone steady. though my heart raced. Clara's missing. They think Rian might be involved. His brows furrowed. Do you believe that? I hesitated. My mind flickered back to that cafe meeting. The exhaustion in Rian's eyes. The regret in his voice. No, I admitted softly. Not this time. But before I could explain further, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. Ms. Leah, this is Detective Aaron from the Central Precinct. We'd like you to come in for a few questions. It's about Mr. Rian. He mentioned your name. My heart sank. He what? He said you might know something about what Clara was planning before she disappeared. It felt surreal. Being dragged back into their chaos. After all this time. But I couldn't avoid it. Not if I wanted this nightmare to end once and for all. At the station, Rian sat across from me in the interrogation room. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, his hands cuffed loosely on the table. He looked nothing like the composed man I once loved. He looked broken. When he saw me, his expression softened. You came, he said quietly, as if it was something he hadn't dared hope for. I sat down, crossing my arms. You said I might know something. What did you tell them? He glanced at the mirror, where the detectives were watching, then leaned forward. Clara called me the night before she vanished. She said she was scared, that someone was following her. I frowned. And you think that has something to do with me? He shook his head quickly. No, I just thought you might know who she was dealing with. You were always better at seeing what I couldn't. His words twisted something inside me. Not affection, but a strange sadness. Once, I would have done anything to help him. Now, I wasn't sure if I should. Before I could reply, the detective entered, holding a tablet. Mr. Rian, he said, we've reviewed the footage near your estate. Ms. Clara's car left around 10 p.m., but she wasn't alone. He tapped the screen. The video played. Grainy but clear enough. Clara getting into her car, followed by a man in a black coat. The figure's face was partially hidden, but my blood ran cold when I noticed something. The distinctive scar near his neck. Pause it, I said sharply. The detective did. I leaned closer. I know him. Rihan looked at me. Who is it? Her ex-investor. I whispered. A man she scammed years ago before she met you. He was dangerous. My father once warned her to stay away from him. Rian's eyes darkened. She never told me that. Of course she didn't, I said bitterly. She built her empire on lies. The detective nodded slowly. That matches our current lead. We found the same man's vehicle abandoned outside the city this morning. Rian exhaled shakily, relief flickering across his face. So she's not dead? The detective hesitated. We don't know yet. That uncertainty hung in the air like a blade. When the interrogation ended, I found myself standing in the hallway outside the station, staring at the rain falling against the glass doors. Rian walked up beside me. No cuffs this time. They'd let him go pending further investigation. You believe me now? He asked quietly. I looked at him for a long moment. I believe you didn't make her disappear, but that doesn't make you innocent of everything else. He nodded slowly. I know, but for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. Sorry doesn't fix the past, I murmured, stepping away. It only acknowledges it. As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. Leah, you said once that I'd never let go, but I did. And it feels worse than I imagined. I didn't look back. Then maybe now you understand how it felt to be me. Outside, the rain had softened into a drizzle. I walked to the curb, heart heavy, yet strangely calm. For once, I wasn't tangled in his web of guilt. I had my own life now. And this was the final proof that I no longer belonged in his world of chaos. But fate, as always, wasn't done testing me. That night, I received a parcel at my gallery. No return address. Inside was a small blood-stained locket. My breath caught as I opened it. Inside was a tiny photo of Rian and Clara, and a slip of paper beneath it that read, He'll lose her the way he lost you. A chill ran through me. The handwriting. It was Clara's. Except she was supposed to be missing. Was this a warning or a game? I called the detective immediately, but before he could respond, a breaking news alert flashed on my phone screen. Rian's car found crashed near Old Bridge. Driver missing. I dropped the phone, the sound echoing in my empty gallery. Not again. Not this time. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and ran into the night, heart pounding against the storm. Maybe I had promised myself I'd never look back. But some promises break when the past starts bleeding into the present, because deep down, even after everything, I knew the story between Rian and me wasn't over yet. The night air was thick with rain as I ran toward the bridge, my heart hammering in my chest. Each step echoed memories of the past, the love, the betrayal, the death, and the rebirth that had brought me here. I clutched the blood-stained locket in my hand, its weight heavier than it should have been, as though it carried all the pain I had endured. When I reached the scene, the flashing lights of police cars painted the wet asphalt in red and blue. Rian's car lay twisted against the guardrail, metal groaning under its own misfortune. And there he was, alive but barely conscious, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. My heart stopped for a moment, the old instinct to protect him flaring inside me, before I forced myself to take a deep, steadying breath. Detectives and paramedics moved quickly, but I stepped forward, showing my identification and explaining my relationship, or lack thereof. I wasn't his anymore. I wasn't anyone's. I was my own. When they lifted him onto the stretcher, I leaned close, careful not to touch him too much. His eyes fluttered open, recognizing me instantly. "Leah," he whispered, a weak, broken sound. I knelt beside him. "Rian, you're alive. That's enough. Let them take care of you." Tears welled in his eyes, but he didn't speak. For once, words were unnecessary. The past had taught us both everything we needed to know. At the hospital, I stayed nearby but distant. Ethan was waiting in the lobby, calm as always. His presence a reminder that my life had moved forward, that stability and love were possible even after everything. He didn't ask me to stay by Rian's side. He didn't demand anything. He simply held space for me to make my choice. The next morning, Rian woke, alert but subdued. Clara's games, her lies, and her threats had unraveled completely. She had been tracked and arrested in a foreign city. Her influence over him and me ended. But Rian was changed, broken in ways that no apology or confession could mend. He looked at me quietly. "I almost lost everything, again. I should have died the first time, Leah. Maybe I would have deserved it." I met his gaze, the woman I had become, reflecting in the depth of his regret. "You were given a second chance," I said softly. "But not with me. You've had enough chances. It's time I finally claim mine." He flinched, and I could see the pain in his eyes. The realization that the woman he thought he controlled, the woman he betrayed, had grown stronger than he could ever hope to contain. I stood, adjusting my coat, and felt a calm unlike anything I'd ever known. "Goodbye, Rian. May you finally learn to live with your choices." He tried to reach for me, but I didn't turn back. Every step I took away from him was a reclaiming of myself. My rebirth, my freedom, my life. I felt lighter with each movement, shedding the last remnants of the girl who once waited for a man who would never choose her. Outside, Ethan was waiting, holding an umbrella. He smiled gently as I approached. "You're finally home," he said. I let out a soft laugh, feeling the warmth of his presence surround me. "Home," I echoed, the word feeling right for the first time in decades. We walked together through the quiet streets, the rain now a gentle drizzle. For the first time, I didn't look back. The past, with all its pain and betrayal, was behind me, and as the sun rose the next morning, painting the sky in golds and pinks, I knew this was truly the start of my life. One that belonged entirely to me. No ghosts, no regrets, no chains. Rebirth wasn't just about surviving. It was about walking away when it mattered most. Strong, unbroken, and free. I had finally done it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Peace out.